All right, guys. GM. It's been a really interesting time on in Web three. I think today's been quite interesting, specifically because Maven's bot just announced that he did the airdrop to the Bitcoin Wizards. So officially, Magic Internet Money is officially live, which is definitely interesting. You have one of the most anticipated token migrations from BRC20 to runes, of course. And we're still kind of yet to see if this is going to reinvigorate interest towards tokens on Bitcoin. Obviously, Pups is one that's doing quite well. Dog still kind of trading flat. Bitcoin, obviously, not doing too well. I think it just creeped downwards to 93K. So we'll definitely make it through this hump, I think. But obviously, there's just been so much drama, specifically on the Solana side, that is dragging down the market. I would say down only for the last little while. Look, I think there's really no surprise here. One, Trump launched a meme coin. It was very difficult to see kind of a progression post crime season. You had the LA vape cabal in a dilemma, and then we had one of the probably the worst events in crypto since FTX is the basically rug of close to $200 million from the Libra coin team, and I think it's called Kaiser Ventures or Kaiser Advisory, which is Hayden. Yeah, it's not been it's not it definitely hasn't been a good time to be in Web3, but much like anything, USDC minting on stables is rapidly increasing. You had over 1.5 billion, I think, in a single week be minted on chain. So I think anyone who is really focused in and dialed in on the sentiment on CT is really missing the forest for the trees. Speed Racer, what's up? You are an avid stock and crypto investor, an Ordinals Maxi, Runes Maxi, Billy Maxi to some degree, but wanted to see how you're feeling about everything that's been going on. Obviously, it hasn't been too great, but Bitcoin's still Bitcoin. Bitcoin assets are still thriving. We're in kind of like an isolated silo, and it kind of might be one of those events where people come back and join something, or at least on this ecosystem, that they won't be rugged or won't be scammed. Yeah, sure. It's not a fantastic casino, but I think that's the beauty of it is believe in something. Well, let's get back into the basics of CTOing coins, building communities around meme coins, and doing fun things again. But sentiment is definitely bleeding out. But we're getting pretty close to what I think is, I would say bottom tier sentiment in a lot of things. But the builders are still shipping. They're still doing stuff for runes. You got runes on stacks, which are doing quite well. Good APRs there for liquidity pools. Obviously, Dog has quite a deep liquidity pool on stacks now. Uh, Dylan, do you want to maybe actually, if I can get your opinion on things, are you guys surprised to see that over, I think right now is over 150K of Dog has made it to stacks? Is that right?
Yeah, I am a little surprised. We really haven't improved the user experience yet for the deposits. That's coming in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I do think it's good to see people kind of jumping through the hoops. It's like they clearly enjoy the benefits of having maybe faster speeds there and the ability to put it to work to earn. Um, and yeah, I think people really like the DCA feature as well. I'm using it, like just buying more dog
You
every day,
you,
and I
you
don't
guys are
don't think about it at all.
You
Yeah,
guys are coining this as dog cost averaging, right? Is that the official terminology of DCA on Bitflow right now?
yeah. If you look it up in the dictionary, it's changed. That's what it stands for now. Everyone has agreed. So yeah, we'll expand DCA to other tokens pretty soon.
So I haven't spent too much time on stacks. I mean, I kind of in bits and pieces. I spent some time there when it was bad and when it was less bad. it's obviously, I would say, like, much better than it was a year ago. But have the trading volumes kind of picked up on the pools themselves? Like, what's the sentiment been like from, like, the Stacks community side? Because Stacks has ultimately been like one of the most OG Bitcoin L2 communities, and so, I know there's been previous meme coins on Stacks. I think it was called, what was the name of the dog coin there? Welsh,
Welsh,
yeah.
generational Welsh. That's right.
So Welsh is like one of the original Bitcoin meme coins. Well, Stacks meme coins, but ultimately branded itself as like the OG Bitcoin meme coin. But generally speaking, like, what's been the sentiment towards something like Dog making it over to Stacks? Have trading volumes kind of picked up? Like, what are kind of daily trading volumes, and are they getting close to what we've seen on other AMMs that the Dog is on the Bitcoin side with RuneSex and DotSwap?
Yeah, trading volume has picked up, but it's still, capped by the amount of liquidity. And so, like, I think we probably need to at least still 10x, from here, like at a minimum, to have, um, yeah, to have like a better, just for someone to be able to come along and trade with like some amount of size, you know. And I think, we might have a couple of folks interested in depositing like seven figures into the dog pool pretty soon. So I'm optimistic that we will have those better rates. But yeah, I mean, like, you can think, my mental model is like, with infinite liquidity, how much trading volume would you have, right? And then there's like the Uni V2 pricing curve, and then there's like an improvement there also with Uni V3 that we can roll out with like more concentrated liquidity. You can have much more capital efficient trades that way as well. Um, and yeah, but if with infinite liquidity, how much trading volume would we have on Dog right now? Um, and then, like, if that's a lower amount, then like it's sort of like a stepwise function, if that makes sense. And but I think what's nice and like keeps the pending buys like going is like the DCA function as well, because I think we have like over 1,000 pending buy orders for Dog. I guess people can like like go buy Dog now before those are placed, but it's like people that are just happy to DCA um, into the token, and they can set certain price ranges on that as well to protect themselves, like upper bounds um,
And
and lower bounds.
Will your product eventually be able to be integrated into like Sats terminal? I just posted at the top, these aggregators. Will you guys be able to do
Yeah,
that through layer one where someone could just go to Sats terminal and you guys deal with the rest on the back end? Because that's kind of what you're doing a little bit with this DCA product, which is great. But I think what Sats terminal just came out with here, we really do need aggregators because then people can just go and buy from the aggregator. Otherwise, the some of these low volume things are just getting arbitraged to heck, and basically you can just arbitrage your way down to zero in a sense of some of this, versus if ultimately someone just wants the best price for Dog, you go to Sats terminal, you hit I want to buy $500 worth of Dog, and it'll find the best place to buy it for you, which then ultimately arbs itself, right? I mean, the price will arb itself through these types of things.
yeah. Well, one, yeah, I think no doubt we can be a part of Sats Terminal. I think aggregators are important, especially since we built one as well, but only on the Saks layer so far. I'm not sure that I agree it arbs down to zero. I mean, like, if you have more trading activity on these tokens, that's more people earning organic yield. I think that's positive, and maybe a number go up. But
No, it will,
yeah, I
but
mean,
it's like during low volume. What's happening? We've seen it over the last few weeks with some of them who have is people are accepting large bids on Magic Eden, and then so then they're dropping the floor because then they're dropping there, and then they're going to the other one and they're doing the same through like say dot swap or these others. But again, this is just a short term thing. Volume fixes all of this. We just haven't had it, and hopefully with what Farmer was just talking about on the Solana side, people have lost conviction and they've kind of just been followers and not leaders when it comes to some of these plays and meme tokens, because there was a lot of great memes on Solana and there still are, but people were just kind of going to the next shiny object. And I was mentioning it this morning. This cohort of bad actors. This wasn't their first and second rodeo. They've probably been doing this for weeks, if not months, on a lot of different names. They just hit the last couple of being the biggest.
Probably years, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
these organized groups creating new tokens and launching things left, right, and center. These are the same types of people that launched utility token scams in the ICO era. They're the same types of people that launched DeFi scams and forks on other chains, pre-sales for previous meme coins, celebrity coins, you name it. Like they have a master plan usually that they stick to this framework that they know that can generate them money. And obviously, it is quite sad because it's the retail investor that gets hurt the most. I understand that people are like, oh, like don't cry in the casino, but like you don't want to play in a casino that has rigged games. Do you go to the gas station to play slots, or do you actually just go to a normal casino where you have predictable outcomes? And so I think, over time, people are realizing that, the longer you play on the Solana side, if you're not an insider, if you're not getting information first, if you're not getting an edge by being closest to those who actually create these tokens and kind of share them to KOLs to promote them and whatnot, you realize that this is not a game that's worth playing. And I think we finally had this rude awakening moment where, Solana was the best place to build scams because there was so much hot retail money going from one thing to another. And what that does is that creates an environment where it's very profitable to be launching new projects left, right, and center because the hot ball of money is going from one to the next to the other, and it's only the people that are in the know that seems to gain, or in the case of Libra, even the people in the know had nothing to gain, and it was just a proper rug of all rugs. And I think the other part too is we overestimate how liquid this ecosystem and this meme coin space really is. To be pulling $200 million of capital out of an ecosystem, that's a substantial amount of retail money. $200 million of value can move a lot of assets, 5, 10, even 100x at times. And if you have that just evaporate and vanish and leave the ecosystem and go to the pockets of those who are kind of extractors, it kind of ruins the space. We've seen this happen with NFTs of Ethereum cycle too, where you had $1 million mints, $80 million mints at times. And those moments really kind of marked the top because the it was truly only the creators that ended up winning. Obviously, I think any ecosystem or any economy has to have a healthy balance of wins on both sides. It certainly can't be too far favorable for creators, and it can't be too far favorable for retail. There's a balance of creating sustainable value, but we've definitely gone off the deep end, and it's look. I think most people knew the game that they were playing, but most retail who have entered through apps like Moonshot and ecosystems like Solana are starting to feel like this is all a scam, all again. It's a negative look for the industry. um it's all about building a good intergalactic cross-chain casino at the end of the day, at least from a speculative perspective of like what we deem as users to be fun. And the tech starts to build around that as we trade things. I think the primary use case of crypto as a product market fit has proven itself out to be trading oriented. And if we can't really create an environment where traders even want to be there for these assets, or even holders don't want to be there for these assets, then we haven't created an ecosystem that works. And the Bitcoin side is also, look, I'd be lying if I said we had a perfect ecosystem. We've been having a down only ecosystem in a similar way, where the miners for a lot of these mints were the only ones that were standing to benefit. So we had an environment from Rune's launches be by design only favorable to one party, and it's the miners and not the retail that creates these assets. So look, I think Bitcoin obviously had a runes value creation problem. Solana had an insider cabal problem where it was far too scammy, and these things all self-regulate over time. But we're in a stage where we're probably resetting the market a little bit, or resetting the casino, until we create better designed, economic games. But look, I don't want to pry too far into the negatives. I think there's still a lot to look forward to. It is quite funny that Dog was, going to Solana, and Solana just decides to turbo nuke with this with the whole ecosystem, and taking everything down with it. So I don't know. Maybe Dog is just gonna realize that they're just gonna go to stacks at this point, and maybe that's where they put.
If only there was some other, Bitcoin centric, layer two they could maybe go to instead. Um,
Well, if only that Bitcoin centric L2 had the same amount of users as Solana,
yes,
it'd be
yes.
phenomenal, right? Like I think,
Then we'd be cooking, no
yeah,
doubt, and the
exactly.
same speeds, exactly. Yeah,
Look,
yeah,
I think at the end of the day, all roads lead back to Bitcoin, and we're gonna start to realize that very quickly. That look, we're these layers, built on Bitcoin, are dramatically safer, more secure, and more fundamentally sound than building layers on Ethereum. Ethereum has its own kind of issues with it. You have Hyperliquid, which is building Hype VM, Hype EVM, or Hyper EVM, which isn't a Ethereum L2 at all. So it's just its own separate L1. You have Mega ETH, which is again a separate L1. You have Monad, which is a separate L1. So I think the thing is that we're having on the Ethereum side is like, Ethereum doesn't really matter, but EVM does. And so people are starting to realize that very quickly. And I would think that the EVM money is likely to go to some of these performant EVM. I wouldn't even call them layers, but separate L1s. And so what does that mean for Ethereum price? Well, I don't know, probably down considerably. And so what asset do you have on these chains? Like Monad is going to care about the Monad token. Mega ETH is going to care about their Mega ETH token. And look, at the end of the day, like, why don't we just build the blockchain that has Bitcoin as a dominant token on the chain itself? I know that's not economically sexy for builders at times, because you want to drive value to your native token, your native L1 token, your L2 token, what have you. That's the whole point of having VCs and having a win-win kind of emissions program and incentives program to build off of. But I think if we just focused on building from a sound platform with first principles, I think we would have much more success over the long run, and a much longer trajectory and even velocity for sustainability, right? Rather than starting to build competitive, blockchains between one another. Obviously, very excited for Arch, because they are prioritizing that type of design. But Stacks, of course, they're prioritizing Bitcoin being a dominant asset in the ecosystem, and Stacks is, it's part of the chain itself too. But I think the priority for the Stacks team more recently is to bring as much Bitcoin into the ecosystem, and make it the Bitcoin dominant opportunity. So yeah,
yeah.
I'm still bullish. Long story short.
Nice. Yeah. No, I think yeah, that has kind of been the priority lately, especially with the focus on SBTC. I think, maybe Ethereum sort of found some product market fit with more programmability, than Bitcoin at one point, right? And then Solana kind of found some product market fit with programmability and speed. And I think that, Stacks has a good chance to find a product market fit with all three, right? With programmability, speed, and Bitcoin security. And I can see a future there where, like, you have Arch for more of like the pure L1 interactions, right? And then you also have like sort of maybe Stacks as like a monolithic L2 If the next focus, rather than just onboarding SBTC, if the next focus is a little bit more on speed and like transaction per second capacity, even if that's not like the blocker today, but painting a picture where like we have the infrastructure to scale this stuff. You can define assets on layer one. You can use them on Arch, or if needed, like they can scale to something that is maybe a little bit faster and can have the best product experience, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with you. And if we just look at like where we're at with Bitcoin fungibles today, I think we're at a perfect like inflection point where if people come here to Bitcoin today, they finally see that we have swaps and aggregators, and they're no longer trading these blocks on Magic Eden. So it's a much more familiar ecosystem environment. And I think that in itself, coming at a time where people are looking at, where to put their capital, what to do next, is quite an interesting opportunity. I think, last time we had ETH Denver, it was one of those moments specifically for ordinals and node monkeys were still fresh, puppets were still fresh at that point, where there was so much attention, there was so much interest in BTC at ETH Denver specifically, that all of the ETH heads were like, "Oh, cool! Like that's an awesome project. Like I guess these are kind of like the crypto punks of Bitcoin. I guess these are kind of like the Miladies mixed with MFers mixed with whatever type of vibes on Bitcoin. I guess this is kind of like a cool new thing." And whereas last year was all about ordinals as a revival story, and partially some spillover effects to pre-runes, of course, had happened over that point in time. I'm not sure if we had too much pre-runes. Maybe pre-runes were actually not a thing at that point. I think that came slightly after. Actually, no, it was out. Arctic was out. I remember Runestones were also out. I think. Uh,
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
yeah, I think it was out. Maybe it was just Arctic actually, because I don't think the Runestones came until about a month or two later, if I'm not mistaken, in early March. But they could have been out at that point in time. But I think whereas like last year was all about the revival and the inflection point for ordinals and doing cool things there, we're at this point where maybe East Denver, and obviously I'm kind of speculating here, but I think a lot of the revival is going to come to Bitcoin meme coins. We've already seen Bitcoin meme coins actually still hold their value relative to other assets. Not saying much because the market caps are definitely way lower than the peak market caps of any Solana based token or Ethereum based token. But we've held up quite nicely. We haven't been caught in this rut of a chain having massive amounts of FUD. It's Bitcoin. We're pretty insulated, and I think that's a pretty good position to be, especially as we have better infra, better UX, and things like Sats Terminal, like Speed just mentioned here, as an aggregator, which starts to feel more like trading with Uniswap and Jupiter, where you set the amount of Bitcoin you want, and it aggregates to the marketplace that has the cheapest order. Obviously, we'd love to see Stacks pools be integrated into it very soon. Or yeah, or Arch going live, of course, Matt. But look, we can't have it all just yet. But I think we're getting this nice warm lead up where slowly, if we sustain attention for a period of 3, 4, and even 6 months, there's enough momentum to keep bringing more people here.
I
I
would say
think that's really
we
important.
have the brands, we have community, we have the asset. We just don't have the price yet, and I think it's one of those situation where ultimately, it's pretty tough to build community. I'd say that's the biggest thing because someone can make a great product, but if there's no community and no one to rally around, it's just going to fall by the wayside. And that goes from products, that goes from you name it. And so I think everybody is kind of been in this space a while, kind of knows. I mean, we think about our meme tokens. Well, we really do have great community around 5 to 10 names, maybe even a few more than that. Smaller communities that are still fairly active, and I think that's one of the toughest things. That's the reason why all these other tokens have failed is they can't last 24 hours, and basically they get rugged and everybody leaves. um, and so I think, we've developed all that. Now we're starting to get the infrastructure and framework for better trading to make it more user friendly, because it hasn't been extremely user friendly as of late. But if we think about where we were just a few years ago when all this started, I mean, we were trading these JPEGs in spreadsheets. And so we've come a long way from that. And then we're not even a year old on the fungible side. And just think of the product ships that have happened since April. I mean, it's pretty crazy, the amount of people that have been continuing to work. So, I have full confidence we're going to get there. It's just the question is the market willing to wait? And for a while there, the market was saying no because there was so much money to be had over on Solana. When in reality, they just were basically just feeding that kind of horse in a sense, and all of a sudden they just pulled the rug. All the gains of the entire cycle potentially, and major losses occurred, unfortunately, for a lot of people, if they got into this, kind of sold their winners almost in a sense, and got rugged out of their money. And so I think, it happens to everybody in all of these phases. It happened to me last cycle. I was in Luna, was one of my bigger holdings, last cycle. And you're doing the, anchor protocol. And when things look so good, sometimes you got to take a step back and say, maybe there's something wrong with this. And I think that's what we just had in the meme token side of things, where, people were just getting 100x's left and right. Pump fund was just pumping out volume. And now all of a sudden everyone's like, wait a minute, you know, it's pretty difficult. I mean, if you can't go to sleep and you're worried about, your token going to zero, or you can't go out to eat or anything. That's not a very long term play when it comes to some of these things. And I sleep extremely comfortable holding my ordinals and my runes, for that matter. Partly because of the communities and the products that are here and people continuing to ship. And again, price is a short term metric. It's pretty tough to beat those other ones, which are very tough to build.
Yeah, I think we're like one of the benefits is like we don't really have to worry about Bitcoin becoming a ghost chain, as long as we like continue to just build more and more useful products for people to use on top of it. Whereas I think these other chains, they do have to compete. It's so hard to compete for attention that they're definitely not going to compete like in terms of being as sound of a money, or like Bitcoin just by far has the most institutional interest from that perspective. So even if, I mean, like, I don't want to act like market timing doesn't matter for product launches, and for building a community, it definitely does. But at least like speed, to your point, like we have Bitcoin to fall back on, right, for this cycle, the next one, the one after that. Um, Bitcoin has the best chance to be around for the next 10, 50, 100 plus years. And I think fungible tokens are going to be a huge part of that, whether um, they take off this cycle or whether they take off next cycle. Um, yeah, I just think that's like we previously, like if you think about ETH Denver, right, like whatever last year, like Farmer Joe was saying, I don't know, I was trying to reflect on like how far, maybe we've all come since then. And it's like there was a lot of focus on like there's so much attention on Bitcoin layer twos, and um, I think we've kind of been previously blocked by like bad UX and like maybe impractical scaling or programmability solutions. And I don't think that's the case anymore. Like now we have great wallets, we have programmability, um, we have Arch that's going to be coming out soon on mainnet, and then you have like the layer two stuff, right? You have even some of these automation and like AI solutions, and I think you have idle liquidity that's going to be there until we build great products for it in the form of BTC. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think
Be,
it's the
being
race to get
slow
the best
being
product right
slow,
now.
being proof of work, and having transaction fees can be bad, but it also can be protective to your network in a sense of some of these bad actors coming in. And we think about a lot of the bot activity and everything else that comes with it. And so there is some positives. We talk about it negative as far as some of the users, but there is a lot of positive when it comes to Bitcoin's framework, and that's part of the reason why it continues to grow and adopt. And now, again, I think our next leg higher when it comes to this ecosystem is what's being built right now. People in this space, in this room, all of this stuff. The usability of Bitcoin is going to increase. If we think about like the mempool, the mempool has gone down and down, and for some reason the ordinals community think it's on them that it's gone down. In reality, our transactions are such a small subset of Bitcoin's network effect as a whole, but you can see the metrics of how people are holding Bitcoin is dramatically different. Now people are putting them in custodians and ETFs, and they're using it more as an investment vehicle rather than a transaction and sending and buying and borrowing and lending. But I think if we can build out some more of this framework on the network, I think it'll naturally bring in more users, both from ordinals and runes, but also just plain infrastructure, DeFi, usability, things of that nature.
Yeah,
Well,
I think we're getting really close to, kind of feature parity at the things that need to have feature parity, right? Like I think, one, a lot of the complaints that were associated with NFT trading were related to sniping and unfilled transactions. And so, what did we do? We solved that. And then, a lot of the complaints to runes were all about, I don't want to trade with blocks. And so we have, custodial solution AMMs or L2 solution, multi-sig ways to trade these assets through the L1 again. And we have wallet infrastructure that works. And we have, the ability to buy and sell with zero friction now. Certainly, like I think that we're getting to a point where the only constraint that we're dealing with is Bitcoin's 10-minute block times. And once we get to that point, well, then we're just going to start cracking away at the next problems that users are having. And so, there's going to be the case of, wanting scaling solutions for some of these, assets, or, wanting a faster trading experience for your meme coins that is also accessible from the base layer. Yeah, I think once we finally have things solved by the teams that are diligently building and committed to building, and it almost is kind of insane that they are having the high level of conviction that they do. I think at the end of the day, like it wouldn't be anything if this wasn't built on Bitcoin. I think that's the key driver of why builders still remain here, remain disciplined and convicted. And I think, the amount of work that any team has been doing over the last year and a half, especially the builders, are giving them dramatic legs up in the next inflection point of 0 to 1 when we do have one. Look, I think doubting that moment in time to happen on Bitcoin is kind of a false reality. If you just think about it, like we never really thought any of this was actually going to be possible, and we did. But like, what brings us that better, UX, and like what we even desire from usability and users thereafter, I think is still a massive black box. But we can speculate on that, and I think that's quite interesting. Speed, you talked about market timing being, an interesting factor of success. Obviously, Node Monks came at a perfect time right before, things got pretty hot on NFTs. Wanted to get your take on maybe some of the new mints that we're seeing. We've seen quite a bit of like pushback, maybe, some warranted FUD, maybe some unwarranted FUD towards things like the new OMB mint. It's priced, to my kind of view at a pretty modest and reasonable price point of accessibility to broaden the distribution. And it might also be coming at a time where the market is in a bit of a low period. And so, if we do swing backwards, that could be, I would say a pretty big success story for those who mint and some of the original holders who have whitelist access. And then, more recently, today, Mavens did the first airdrop. Well, I think he just did the airdrop associated with the Bitcoin Wizards to airdrop, I believe, is it 5% or 10% of the Magic
Yeah.
Money token?
Yeah, I just
Is it?
see actually just I see it on Magic Eden now. There's been a couple trades. but it's just starting to roll in. It looks like there's only 900 and some holders, so 976. So I don't know if that's the airdrop part or if that's
Yeah,
people
I
starting to
think
migrate.
it's just the airdrop part. I'm not sure if OrchKit last night they changed their fee rates or fees for the migration to, I guess, be slightly more favorable to smaller holders, and they're still sticking with a percentage, which can get discounted if you hold the OrchKit token, which is called Pwrd. But I think, more interestingly, the first sale of Magic Internet Money, I believe, happened on Satflow. Is that right? Like, can that be verifiable on chain?
So it was actually the first few listings, but yeah, that's right now it's just the folks that I think held the Bitcoin Wizard JPEGs, right? That have received it. So the holder base is still pretty small. And you gotta think like a lot of these guys have quite a large chunk of this token and they gotta probably go and split it up and try and build the market up that way. So it's yeah, still like kind of big lots. And I think the big sort of inflow will come once the OrdKit migration kicks off, as hopefully that will result in a lot of people getting the token in their hands pretty quickly.
And if I'm not mistaken, the market cap seems to be sitting around 80 mil for this first, I would say, small tranche that just released. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere in that range.
That's what I got. But again, there's only been a few trades, 88.7 million on Magic Eden. But again, it's still pretty early. But the thing that people lose sight of, when we talk about the price of a token, is one thing's called the float, which is the liquid token trading in a market. That goes for stocks, that goes for everything. And so, we have some of these kind of ones like this. If we think about why the Solana token went, or the Pups token went crazy on Solana right off the bat, there wasn't many tokens on Solana that were tradable. So as a result, what happens, you get a few buyers that come in with some size, and because of how the infrastructure of trading works, it really pumps a price. And so it could be one of those situations where it's going to incentivize people to move their token over a lot quicker if in fact you do see some volume and some excitement, revolve around this. It'll also be interesting to see. I don't know if there is a team per se that hold these tokens and how the liquidity pools and which ones are going to try to get into off the bat, because I think one of our biggest hiccups when it comes to trading has been, using Magic Eden as an oracle or reference price for all these runes. And hopefully, as we continue to get more aggregators, it won't matter, and we're just going to go to the aggregator and buy the best price, like we talked about earlier. But at least for now, it seems like that's where everyone goes right off the bat, which isn't the best way to trade, in my opinion, when we're talking to some of these assets. But it'll be interesting to see, the people behind that kind of hold a lot of this token. I have some myself that I got back in the day that I'm going to move over here this afternoon. But I'm hoping that people can rally around some of these newer trading platforms
Pete,
and
so
kind
I
of
think
focus on them.
this is a missed opportunity. I think, if I were to like redo the runes migration all over again, I would have set a 1% fee for all tokens and then had that build the liquidity pool for the token itself. And I think if you did that with something like Magic Internet Money, you would absolutely dominate because you would have the deepest L1 liquidity pool on day one. Obviously, I think
And
that
no one would complain about it. No
no
one would
one would
complain about
complain
that.
about that because that would be a positive, I would say,
Right.
catalyst.
Everybody's equally contributing their percent that they hold.
Exactly. It's like you're basically forcing people to sell 1% of their token supply for the broader good of a token, and I think that would be actually a pretty good
The only
experience.
problem is this team hasn't necessarily been the most fluid and the best team when it comes to their communication and their execution.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
besides that,
let's chat about that because I think it's a worthwhile topic of discussion. So last week, Nomad announced, I guess, his departure from Magic Internet Money and Mavens, and got kicked out of the Discord. And he ended up doing a free and fair airdrop to communities where he airdropped 30% of the token supply for Magic Internet Money MIM, which is his version of Magic Internet Money, but as a fair launch. He was promising tier one centralized exchange listings. I don't know where that token sits, but I proceeded to immediately sell my airdrop allocation because there's only one rune that matters at the end of the day, and it's rune number 17 with respect to the Magic Internet Money name. And, I think a lot of people are quite happy to have, Nomad out of, the environment and be finally done with this asylum that they created. But I think it's an interesting token. It obviously is one of the most mimetic names, and I think it's a net positive for Bitcoin meme coins in general. Certainly, we've had Dog bring a lot of attention with runestones and pre runes as a dog token. But I think I'm only speaking for myself, but I think Magic Internet Money could be a much bigger driver of reinvigorating attention to Bitcoin meme coins than Dog was, especially because it's new, it's shiny, it's fresh, it's doing things from the ground up right now, is coming to the Runes ecosystem. And obviously, there's some counter arguments to it, as like, oh, BRC 22.0 is coming, and Magic Internet Money and all runes are going to be going back to BRC 20 and have programmability and so forth. But I'm not necessarily convinced with that argument just yet. I still think there's far too much developer velocity and frictionless UX that is being done specifically around runes that doesn't necessarily warrant the need for programmability. We're finding ways to get programmability despite without it actually being within the base token protocol level. But
I agree. I
I'm
mean, we
super
just need
excited.
some wins in the space, just and I think if we can get back to that, the vibes return and all of a sudden, things will kind of pick up. But I do think, this is one that has the potential to do well just because it's already got the name and the brand and the recognition right off the bat, just from where it originated. Um, I think you mentioned the OMB mint. I think I'm actually pretty bullish that mint. I really do like the art, and I have a couple OMBs myself, but it just seems like right now everything's at peak FUD, and that's where we've been in the past. And you never know when things change, and at some point, I imagine they will. But right now, I just think the Solana thing just kind of really hit people hard, and it kind of impacts things. And then prior to that, it just was kind of a bleed in our ecosystem. But again, we've talked about this before. I mean, it's one of those things where these are longer term plays, mid to long term plays, not these kind of quick kind of pump and dump situations, which could be good in the long run in the sense we're allowing the tech to catch up to this infrastructure to get caught up to everything being built. It's just unfortunately, you're losing some of the impatient in the process.
Look, I think there's still going to be, a bit of a drag on meme coins in general based on, the broader sentiment. But, despite that, Bitcoin ordinals and, early BRC 20 tokens did pretty well and outperformed the rest of the market despite that. I guess it's kind of TBD if there's so much drag on meme coins in general that it's going to drag the rest of the market down with it. And I guess the question mark is, how long is the drag on sentiment and I guess, retail players to and I guess what's going to cause them to be reinvigorated with interest. I think the other part too is a lot of people are maybe having false expectations of, the performance of Magic Internet Money. They think that maybe suddenly it gets into being a rune, and that means that it starts trading upwards. And if it doesn't match their expectations of trading upwards, well, then maybe we see some selling pressure and some friction there. Migrations have never been really easy, and I would say that look, I wish them the best. It is a pretty short window. I think it's just about 6 weeks long to migrate 100% of the token supply, which feels a little bit short, especially to circulate to all of the BRC 20 holders. There's definitely a large amount of wallets which maybe forgot about the migration, maybe won't see this, and maybe will FUD it thereafter. These are experiences that we've had with pups, and it didn't bode well to the price itself. So maybe the friction, the FUD, the stress, and maybe the sentiment around Magic Internet Money is a little bit turbulent, or maybe not as frictionless as people expect it to be. But I think, we're trying our best here to bring assets that people, genuinely wanted for a very long time. And if this doesn't do it, if this doesn't reinvigorate some interest in the Bitcoin space and make things a little bit more fun, then I think it's just a waiting game at the end of the day, and we'll come back, but we'll come back when the market takes a bit of a reset, and Bitcoin price probably creeps up higher, and pulls assets up with it, and brings speculation back. But Bitcoin dominance is, I don't think, has ever been higher than it is right now. It's pretty groundbreaking that the only people that have done very, very well this cycle are the Bitcoin stackers, really. And if you haven't stacked sats, then you're kind of, I think you're kind of in a bit of a chokehold right now. Just there's not enough liquidity to sell, and you don't have liquidity to buy. And so, where does that lead the market? I don't know. I think for the first time, I'm still cautiously bullish, cautiously optimistic. But my time horizon is much larger than other people's impatience. So I'm happy to sit on my hands and wait for things to come back. Because I think most of the bleeding has already happened. We see meme coins being down 80, 90, plus percent on the Solana side. They can't go down another 90%. I mean, they can, but that'd be a freaking bloodbath across the board. So I think attention is just going to start shifting towards performant EVM environments, and hyperliquid and hyper EVM is definitely interesting. Some of the posts today basically have said that Jeff's building in Pwrd, which is a little bit surprising, but also not surprising because hyperliquid was done in a similar way, where the first iteration was okay, and it just kept getting better, and slowly kind of got to where it is today. And Hyper EVM probably has the same experience, where it probably isn't great on day one, but no ecosystem really is on the first day. I think it's a long story short, but I think there's enough attention and interest and demand that, and quality in the teams that are building the product itself, that things start to shift upwards at some point. So I don't know. Robert, do you have a different take on that? Like, where do you stand, being bullish, bearish, excited about some of these mints like OMB, like the Wizards 10K? Like, do you think the market has the ability to sustain, additional dilution, or maybe like grow the user base because of this? Obviously, Udi's teasing the Wizards mint being in March as well, and he said it's going to be the most expensive mint ordinals have ever seen. Just setting expectations there, but where do you think we kind of stand today?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I applaud ZK for pricing the white and black eyes mint pretty well. Like of all the things you can say about it, I don't think it's gonna be a flop. Like, I do think it will sell out. However, like, I think the community sentiment in the last couple weeks have been pretty negative on the OMB side. Like, the floor has pretty much cratered since the announcement, and have seen a lot of FUD even from, like, long-time OMB supporters that have really gotten traction on Twitter. So I think the market's just tired. Their bags are beaten down to a pulp, and meanwhile, they're being asked to pay more. Like, it just feels like anything minting right now for even a kind of like $1,000 plus range in Sats is I don't know. It doesn't seem to be very well received in the market. But do I think there's still room and appetite for more projects, more collections to bring people in? Absolutely. Like, if priced right, then I think these things are good for the eco, right? Like, what are we doing here? If artists can't sell their art on BTC for a price they think is fair, like, I mean, it's a free market. People should be allowed to do that, right? But yeah, the community sentiment is certainly not great at the moment.
And I guess, this is a BTC Denver warm up, but is there anything that you're kind of looking forward to BTC Denver and, some of the discussions or some of the panels that you might be speaking at?
Yeah, just more native like Bitcoin DeFi stuff for me. Like I've never been super interested in the meme coin side. I think like, we're kind of seeing the last like dying breath of meme coins personally. This is just my own personal thesis. Not really a fan of like everything going on the meme coin side, but there's a lot of innovation still in the works and coming soon for Bitcoin DeFi related products, and that's really what I'm going to be paying attention to.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Matt, are you speaking at any of the events? I don't know if you're able to speak here.
Yeah, I'll be speaking at a few panels like the Bitcoin Day thing that the ETH Denver is putting on. It's kind of funny. ETH Denver is putting together some Bitcoin programming, but happy to get involved there, talk about scaling and programmability. And then, yeah, a couple other side conferences I think I'll be speaking at as well.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's going to be an interesting time, especially as the OMB mint is happening in a similar time frame. And I think the Wizards 10K, I'm not sure if, do you know, Robert, when that is expected to launch? I suspect it's going to happen before the Taproot Wizards mint.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there was a date published. The new leadership of of this sort of wizard memes seems to be doing a pretty good job corralling everyone. So I have a lot more confidence now on whatever date they put out. But I think we're just seeing still a little bit of transition in leadership. So we'll know soon when we'll get those when we'll get that 10K. But I mean, honestly, like. I couldn't be more excited. I think that if we do get the 10K as a child of the sub 100 inscription, that is going to be another really prominent 10K in our ecosystem, right? Like when eventually the attention does come back and there is more activity, like giving folks the choice of sort of the provenance of Maven's bot involvement. It's a decent collection size, paying homage to the CryptoPunks 10K. I think it's just going to be really good to have another great PFP on Bitcoin. So yeah, like probably one of the on the ordinal side at least, it's definitely the thing that I'm most excited for this year.
Yeah, fair enough. And I know I just tweeted the spaces if someone wants to hop in. Obviously, I can't jump in, but WordKit is speaking, so I suspect they're probably going to do their Magic Internet Money front end go live event very soon. If not, it already hit. Yeah, should be interesting. I mean, Robert, do you think like people are gonna come back to Bitcoin because it's more equitable in a lot of ways? Solana's down 20%, and everyone was like, Solana's gonna flip Ethereum, and Ethereum's gonna go to zero. But Ethereum's actually been like one of the only things that has performed very reasonably, right? Like I think it is quite interesting to see the sentiment shift. But Solana is still, a very performant environment. It still has like some of the best fiat on ramps. It still has, a suite of high quality projects on it. I think there's just this, scam culture almost that predates, this cycle uh, because of SBF and FTX. I think a lot of the most predatory actions have always felt like they were on Solana, especially some of the early Solana NFT mints.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like too like we're maybe calling the death of Solana a little too early here, right? Like if you look at Sol ETH, it's still up 60% on the year. So like I don't know if it's entirely fair to just be like, yeah, Solana's dead. I share the negative sentiment around all of the meme coin scams. I think probably in this case people are going to go to jail. There's enough money trading hands. There's enough sketchy behavior. Insider trading. Like there's a solid case for some suits in New York to put these guys away. and have a big win for the U.S. government. So it's pretty nasty. Like all of the stuff around Trump meme coin and Libre and all of this stuff, like it's pretty despicable. But I mean, Solana, like for all the things you can say about like the Trump meme coin and all this stuff, like Solana has held up extremely well to the demand, right? Like extremely well. Trump was a kind of like black swan event that we've never really even seen in crypto, and the fact that like for the most part all the oracles held up, like all the infrastructure was mostly worked, like that is really cool to see, and continues to make me bullish. But I don't know if this means that like people are going to come to Bitcoin necessarily, like having been burned on Solana. Like it's not like you really needed to hold Sol to do any of this stuff. Like you could hold stables on Solana. So I don't know. Like yeah, like I don't think the end is here for Solana, but yeah, we'll have to see what happens. It's obviously quite a turbulent time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons to be bearish as a retail trader and as a speculator, and maybe just sitting this out and sitting on your hands for a little bit probably doesn't hurt. It's probably good for a lot of people's mental health, quite frankly. I mean, I can't imagine, sleeping knowing that your coins are probably gonna go down to zero in most cases. Be very healthy dynamic. I mean, Speed was up here earlier and he mentioned this. Like, he sleeps very soundly knowing that he's sitting on ordinals and some Bitcoin meme coins. Robert, I know you don't like Bitcoin meme coins or have a neutral stance towards them.
Yeah,
Uh,
just to be clear, I'm chain agnostic in this thesis. Like it's not just Bitcoin meme coins, like all meme coins. I think it's a little toppy right now.
well, let's get some utility coins on Bitcoin going. I think let's bring it back ICO style. Let's bring back utility projects on Bitcoin. Let's do the meme coins with multiple steps, as Murad likes to say, and actually bring value into the ecosystem with projects and teams and dApps that have a pathway to sustainability and even long term fee generation. I think the fundamentals seem to be at play here, and the tokens with the best fundamentals right now are, the ones that sure didn't go up 20, 30x, but they're definitely not down 90% at this point in time. Hyperliquid, of course, being one of them that everyone seems to be excited for, especially with the amount of fees that it's generating and trading volumes that is at this point on the perp side rivaling Binance. Yeah, with only like 10,000, I think, active traders as well. So it just goes to show you like how small this market from a trading perspective really is. Like if there's only 10,000 active, I would say institutional or pro retail traders on the perp side, which is the biggest market. Trickle that down to things like NFTs and meme coins, you get to maybe a couple hundred people that actually know what they're doing. Yeah. Matt, do you wanna touch on any exciting things from the art side for a little bit, and any interesting new teams, new builders, any exciting things that you want to share as alpha to get the people going and maybe cure our bear market blues here.
I don't, I guess if we're just considering like the meme coins and the ordinal side of thing, it's bear market. But like you said, if it's Bitcoin, we're kind of sitting pretty cozy. I think that it's quite exciting what's coming. Like there's just so many apps that are going to be utilizing Bitcoin as both like the on ramp or the access point to a lot of these various financial products, particularly yield bearing financial products, whether that's stemming from more like CFI related things like funding rate from doing some delta neutral strategies on centralized exchanges, to more of like the DeFi constructs, as well as just like RWA. And there's just so much exciting things that are forming behind the scenes in the ecosystem that I think there's a lot to be bullish about. So um, yeah, I think like Hyperliquid is a good mental model, but just everything sort of being able to settle on Bitcoin, use your Bitcoin and you're just like one click away with your Xverse wallet to be able to do that and engage with a lot of those things. I think that's, kind of a good mental model to expect over the next 6 months. So pretty exciting. In terms of degen stuff, I can't wait for Pups Fun.
Yeah, what's going on with that? Apparently, I should know, right?
You should know for sure. Tell us
Ooh.
about it.
Yeah, it'll be a pups based Arch dApp product that allows Satoshi Dice to make its comeback on Bitcoin. I think that's I know Robert was a massive Satoshi Dice player, so look, if you want to play it, you gotta get some pups and deposit into the app chain itself, and you can bring back the good old times. Yeah, I think maybe down the line it'll end up being open to Bitcoin as well to bring true Satoshi Dice with Sats in play, but we'll see where that goes over some time. The classic kind of spin the wheel game, lottery dice game should be interesting, should be fun, and I think that's the whole point is like let's bring back sustainable fun rather than Ponzi level fun. Um, Ponzi level fun. Everyone loves a good Ponzi until the Ponzi turns its back on you. But I think over the next little while, 3 or 4 months, we're probably going to go into more sustainable, long term builder focused vibes all across the board until the dust settles on a lot of these chains, and some of these hyped up chains certainly go live. Bear chain was one that was very much hyped up, and it hasn't necessarily seen like the interest and adoption that a lot of people expected it to have. I mean, Barachain was hosting massive parties. Everyone was farming Bara and doing a whole bunch of degeneracy in the Discord. But it seems like the vibes after TGE are just not the same on Bara. Like Matt, are you, I think you're more familiar on like the Barachain ecosystem than I am. But
Yeah,
like,
they have like an interesting model where once again it's very heavily reliant on the on-chain economy to really take shape. And what's different about the bear chain model is that they take a lot of the rewards that would typically go to stakers and miners, I mean not miners, I'm sorry, validators. And they offer that to the liquidity providers as additional incentives. So it's kind of like an interesting little Ponzi dynamic there.
But it is like hyperinflationary, isn't it? Like at the end of the day, like is it not like with the emission schedule of like rebasing to everyone who's providing liquidity with deposits
There is
on?
like a two token model with like their BTT and then the bear token. So it is kind of complicated from that standpoint. But yeah, like it really takes into the assumption that you're going to have enough on-chain activity to really supplement the LP incentives after the like the subsidized incentives really end, which I think is about like 3 months after TGE. So like once people realize that it's kind of like a game of musical chairs or sort of a race to the bottom, then it tends to be quite bearish. But like that, it's no different than much of the other ETH aligned ecosystems. We were talking about this earlier, where it's like, to be married to any of these projects, you basically are, like levered to the ETH roadmap, and that has kind of been a losing proposition for the last 3 years. So what's left is you have a lot of, mega whales that still own ETH and won't sell it because they've owned it since like $5. But like as a winning DeFi scenario that isn't subsidized by unsustainable inflationary emission incentives, like that's the only thing that's left. And then you have RWA and basis trade type stuff, and that's really it. So it's not a great time to launch in that ecosystem.
It feels like if you weren't playing the musical chairs liquidity providing exercise of providing liquidity on Optimism and then Arbitrum and then the next L2 and the next L2 and the next L2, you're probably down bad with just your staked ETH, right? Like I mean, like relative to Bitcoin price, BTC ETH ratio has actually never been close to worse at this point. But I think maybe ETH makes some sort of hate rally comeback. I think all of the .ETHs are really hoping for this. Um, but maybe one day they realize that the only sustainable coin and the only sustainable premise of sound money is Bitcoin in itself, and you don't have to play Ponzi game musical chairs to keep growing the value of your Bitcoin. Um, Look, we're I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing, but it certainly was an exercise that didn't necessarily seem to work. It was it works until it doesn't. Is a long story short. And usually there is another cycle every 4 years, which masks the reality. But this cycle doesn't really seem to have played out much like a lot of people thought it would. I'm still in the camp that the real cycle, like the real 4 year cycle, hasn't really started. If you have Bitcoin dominance at like 70+% right now, the cycle really starts and the euphoria really starts when Bitcoin dominance is under 50% or even, it's sometimes under 30%. And so in a 3 trillion total market cap, perspective, Bitcoin is, excluding stables, excluding all the Bitcoin based LSTs, it's like 75% of this whole industry's value. And I don't know. It just feels more and more obvious as time goes on that things will just end up coming back to Bitcoin. I'm already seeing a lot of people post their, oh, I was one of those people that was rotating all of my profits on Solana into Sol, and Sol used to trade at like $270, and now it's close to 150, and I'm starting to feel the impact of this. And to my surprise too, like just looking at Solana as a sustainable ecosystem, despite the amount of fees that it had with all these meme coin activity, with Trump, of course, driving a lot of retail attention and narrative, it was still highly inflationary despite that. So, yeah, I don't know the right answer here. Is maybe the fees were, yeah, I mean, like, Matt, you know this a little bit better than I do, but like the fees right now on Solana are still subsidized, right? Like, it's the way that they are able to have very low fee rates for transactions.
Well, I
Is that
mean,
right?
it's really about the MEV and the priority fees that really add to the base cost. Like you really think that it's, these really cheap transactions, but really there's a lot of value that's being extracted from the end user, that really distorts the big picture. So like it, and this can be sort of like comparable to the overall theme as what I just talked about on the ETH side. ETH is more about this like inflationary emissions. Solana is much more about just like this unsustainable value extraction. So you really need to have like a sustainable like flywheel for the people to want to stay in that asset for the long term. And that's what you have on Bitcoin. You have people that want to stay in Bitcoin. And as you can, like you mentioned, Bitcoin dominance continues to rise. I personally think that has more to do with like ETFs. We're going to be a little bit like less correlated to the overall market cap of altcoins when you have traditional finance capital flowing in through ETF money into Bitcoin. So that's why I think you see a lot of, the disparity among the Bitcoin dominance, but that also presents like an interesting other dynamic for Bitcoin as a whole. Because look, the mempool's fairly dry these days, right? And that's a result of a lot of our Bitcoin being used elsewhere. It's being utilized and locked into cold storage, like for ETFs. It's going into multi-sigs to be traded on these off-chain perps markets like Hyperliquid or in Solana and all these other things. So like we actually do need to focus on getting more on-chain activity. Otherwise, what happens is the smaller and the middle-sized miners, they start to become unprofitable and they drop out. And then this, really nice decentralized money, Bitcoin, that's been in process for several years, now becomes centralized to the largest miners who can stay in business because there's not enough on-chain activity to subsidize the decreasing block rewards that happen every 4 years. So I think we definitely have to focus more on the base layer stuff, and then we can focus on the scalability after we get bottlenecked.
Yeah, I think people, it's easy just to point fingers as to, chains being unsustainable and, say, oh, Ethereum's not sustainable, oh, Solana's emissions are not sustainable, but like, I think the elephant is a room that fundamentally Bitcoin needs fees for it to be long term sustainable, and it too is by default, at least at this point in time, still inflationary by design with the block rewards. And so until we're able to, either have Bitcoin price be high enough to circumvent their costs, plus, I would say have sufficient amount of transactions at the base layer and network activity at the base layer to, make their time worth it to secure the chain itself. Even when we had peak euphoria, BRC20 era, mints, runes era mints, we were still actually not rewarding the miners more than actually, Robert, you know this better than I do. I think you have some data points on this, but there was only like a handful of blocks where the fees in the block exceeded the block subsidy, correct?
Like in what time horizon?
Well, let's just say over the last like year of speculative activity with BRC20 and runes, and even like the sniping era days of last year, like we were still trending in most cases in most blocks to be well under the subsidy.
Yeah, like the trend is just kind of been going down, but yeah, they're like during this sort of like 2023, 2024 area last year, like there was quite a bit of excess Bitcoin being spent on just on-chain degeneracy, which it's completely dried up now, like we're touching low lows as was noted.
I mean, I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we've definitely like stripped away maybe some MEV on Bitcoin in doing things in a secured purchased way, and maybe even just rethinking how we design token launches as well to not reward the miners. But yeah, I think I guess my ultimate question sometimes is like, what is going to bring active L1 activity? And I think Eric from the Tapper Wizards mentioned this is, he thinks it's going to be, the aggregated proofs from ZK rollups that are going to settle on Bitcoin, because those are going to be quite expensive to do and to host. And so this means that there's always going to be, something settling on Bitcoin every 10 minutes. But I still think that's, I mean, we're not talking about 50, 100K type block fees still. Yeah, I don't know what's gonna bring activity back to the base layer like we've had in the past, but it's certainly important to think base layer first for long-term sustainability of Bitcoin over things like side chains and L2s that have very minimal fee accrual to the base layer itself. But Dylan?
Yeah, I think I mean it's great to be focusing on like for Arch to be focusing more purely on L1 stuff, but you know I guess we'll reiterate. I think it's important to be also exploring like the L2 landscape for Bitcoin, because if you have more programmability, you'll have more transactions of people moving in and out of the layer two. Like that can be seen with just like more people deciding to buy dog, like this past week because we offered DCA. But I think we'll it, if we build like a really great product for trading and earning, and we have a really wide funnel where um, you can kick off your user journey by just sending a Bitcoin transaction. Then I think that's a path towards like getting the more activity in the mempool, right? Like it was like 99% of all the activity with runes was just mints. Like nobody has nailed this yet, in a way that is like good for miners, is good for traders, is good for capital deployers, and good for like wallets and SDKs or aggregators to make easily available. So yeah, I think the window is wide open, and yes, stuff on L1 is important, but if you can build like an awesome product on an L2 that it gets people to use the L1 more often, then that's in my mind equally beneficial.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, why don't we start wrapping up the show as we kind of get into the BTC Denver warm up? I mean, it's next week, and I hope to see you. I guess I will see all of you guys there. Dylan, are you going to be coming as well?
Yep, haven't booked the flight yet, but
Nice.
yeah, I'll be there.
Well, I hope you book your hotel on Airbnb soon, because we booked it last week and it was absolutely brutal in terms of how little options there are remaining. But yeah, obviously hope to see, those in the audience as well at some point. If you bump into each other, happy to chat. Myself, Matt, and Robert, and I guess Dylan too. We'll all be kind of speaking and proliferating like of the Bitcoin L1 ecosystem, L2, L1.5 vision that a lot of people, I think, are slowly accepting. But hopefully we'll see a reinvigorated interest towards the assets that we hold. And if not, then it's just a matter of time before it happens. But appreciate you guys all joining. Gonna end the space now, and we'll see you on Thursday.